Okay, so I'm working on a radio here. Turn the volume down a little bit. It's got an intermittent problem, which there'll be a separate video on this if I ever get it fixed. Because it's almost impossible to get this thing to screw up with the cover off. It's a heat-related problem. It has to be very hot. Almost the instant you take the cover off, by the time you grab a test lead, it's done cooled off enough apparently in that circuit that it starts working again. Or the instant you touch something in anywhere in the radio, you try to attach a piece of test equipment, the problem goes away. So right now I've got a bunch of scope probes attached into the PLL synthesizer circuit. This is a hybrid radio. It's a Gemtronics GTX 5000, just in case anybody's interested. It's exactly the same, basically, as the earlier 23-channel radios, other than a few vacuum tubes, a large wafer switch with a boatload of crystals hanging off the back of it went away, and they added a dual circuit board PLL synthesizer circuit. Rather early and primitive by today's standards, but it worked. So I've got 3 channels hooked up on the scope right now. You can look over there, you can see there's 3 channels hooked up. This video is not exactly on this radio. It's about attaching to it. Now, I'm really screwed because I really can't get the top cover on, but with a scope probe, because scope probes, they're big, they're clunky, and that's what this video is on, scope probes. Now, I personally like, because I have sitting over there, a nice old B&K, that's a 4-channel oscilloscope, 100 megahertz scope. Love that scope. Works great. It doesn't have the fancy math features and logic analyzer and a lot of the stuff my newer oscilloscope has, but it works great. One of the things I really like about that scope, though, is when I bought that, I bought it off an electrical engineer who was the original owner. And he used that in his home lab and used it very little. The big thing was, when I got it from him, it came with all the accessories. All the manuals, the original box, the original paperwork, even the original purchase invoice. More importantly, it came with all of the accessories. So it came with all the scope probes. And I've really come to like the B&K scope probes. I just like their feel. I've got Textronics. Pretty much you name a scope probe, I've probably tried it. I've got dozens and dozens of them. And I really like these B&K PR40 scope probes. One of the biggest things I like about them is the tip. You can see it's a wire type tip, a hook, where a lot of scope probes have that, what I call a piece of stamped steel, where it's a hook like that, but it's made out of basically like a piece of sheet metal. And they're thick, and that's the problem. You have a hard time a lot of times trying to get that down into a circuit. You run into the same problem though with this. The other problem is it's so big, trying to get in here, you're left with this big clunky thing hanging off. And another problem is when you're trying to probe down into a circuit, you may not need the tip, you may need the point. Well, it's big and clunky. So for some time now, I've been searching around, scope probes and from other manufacturers, from other oscilloscope manufacturers, and I found there's actually a company that doesn't make oscilloscopes, they make just probes. And it's the company called ProbeMaster. Actually, I have, oh God, I got it sitting over here, because I wanted to keep it. I've got the original little card, here it is, that came with one of the probes. So, you can see, another important feature for me is made in the USA. But there's the company's name, ProbeMaster. And you can see they have a catalog on the internet, so it's probemaster.com. Not affiliated with them. I had to buy all this shit, so. But the biggest feature for these probes, they do have some drawbacks in my opinions, but the biggest advantage to these probes, and I have absolutely fallen in love with them because of it, is the accessory tips. It has a long, what I call hard probe, so like for multimeters, you can get these long probe tip extensions. Okay, this one's, I think, an Agilent. Yeah, this is an Agilent for my Agilent probes. I have the ones from Fluke also. I actually prefer the Fluke test leads a little bit better. But, I like these hard points, and I use them a lot because they're great at getting down into really confined spaces. But there's never been anything like that for an oscilloscope. And if you use a scope and you work on radio, and well, not just radios, anything, I'm sure you've run into that. You need to probe down in where you can't get to the bottom of a circuit board. You need to probe from the top, and the damn end of the probe, it's just too stinking big. Probe Master has solved that problem. So they have a lot of accessories. So they have a hard point. So they have this tip, and it just snaps on, just like on a multimeter. Let me disconnect this one scope probe here. It just pushes on to the end. It's just that simple. And now you have a pointy tip on your scope. They also have, and this is what I really like. Well, actually, I like both of them just as much. They're both fantastic, inventions. They have this little tip or cup that has a wire attached to it, and that's the key. It's got a wire. It's flexible. Now, in the case of this radio, it's long enough where you see that I can lay this down along the side. I'll be able to put the top cover on it pretty much most of the way, and just have this wire sneaking out underneath of the cover, so I can hopefully get it to heat up and have the problem. But they have a bunch of them. So, like I say, it just pushes onto the end of the probe, has the little socket in there that the tip attaches to, and all these different probe tips. So the little mini grabbers, an alligator clip, the little ultra fine, God, I don't know if you can even see that, the little grabbers for like grabbing on, there you go. So you can grab onto the leg of an IC. And these are good brand name tips they're using on there. It's the Easy Hooks, little mini grabbers. And I've got actually two others. Let me remove this B&K probe here, which I was running into the same thing. I couldn't get this probe attached down into the legs on the transistors because I needed to get to the middle terminal and without shorting out against other pins. So I have right here, this is another version they have of the IC pin grabber. And then here's just another one of the little mini J-hooks. But I'll tell you what, I have fallen in love with those things. And that comes off. So honestly, with this, all you need to do is, you wouldn't even need to buy these tips. You can use whatever tips you want, because it has, really the only thing we need would be this cup. We could, make up the rest of it, but it is a nice silicone wire. So, if you get a set of their scope probes, you get one or two of these wires in the kit. If you have a logic analyzer, you can use the little probe ends off of your normal logic analyzer, because that's all this is. This is just a probe end that's meant to be used on a logic analyzer. It just plugs onto the end of this wire that then attaches to your scope probe. So, genius. I just can't say enough about that. I've just fallen in love with that. And I got a couple different ones. I got a dedicated 1K one. I got two of the 110K selectables. I also got, now I wrote it on here because it wasn't written on the probe body. I guess the color code was, but for me to remember, I just wrote it on here. I got a times 100 probe as well. Now for me, I guess a lot of people like the tiny scope probe handles. I kind of like the big clunky handles. That's why I liked the B&K so much. They were round. That's the one thing I never liked about a lot of the Textronics ones. They were flat. I just like this more like it's more of what I think of as a probe, a round, cylindrical style. And like I said, I like the B&K tips a lot. I just really like their probes. I like their cables. Their wires weren't as hard. That's another thing. The Textronics cables are, over the years, they get really hard. This B&K cable is still really nice and flexible. But these cables, they have, again, these Probe Master probes, really nice flexible cables. These are the little wire, the ground wires. These, you can tell these are the good silicone wire. Like I said, I can live with the probe body. I'm getting used to it, using them. Now, a few of the drawbacks, like I say, it's kind of small, but I'm warming up to that. One thing I did find was these little identifier clips. You stick on your scope probe, so when you look over at your scope, you can see, okay, I've got the red lead attached to channel 1, the blue lead is attached to channel 2, and it's easy to look down at your probes then and see, move the camera over a little bit, you can see, okay, here's the red probe, here's the blue probe. They're too small, or they're too big. You stick it on the wire and it just, whoop, it slides down the wire. It doesn't clamp onto the wire really good, so they're too big around, you know, the internal diameter. So what I've actually done, now it's easy for me to fix, not a biggie. I just put a little bit of you know, Loctite Go-To glue, just a dot of glue right there. You can probably see it a little shiny right there, smushed out. But I just glued them on there. That way I don't have, because that's exactly what would happen. You'd pick the probe up and that little thing would, it just rolled, or the ones especially up there at the oscilloscope, they just slide right down a cable. Well, it's not doing much good hanging way down, you know, down here. I need the damn things on the ends of the cables, so. But yeah, I'm happy with these scope probes. I'm really liking them. The tip assortment, like I say, that's my big thing. Is it just for years I've been looking for this specifically. This is what I wanted. When I found they had this, I was like, I gotta get it. I just bought a probe kit. No questions asked. I was like, it's got a long pointy probe I can get down into stuff. And when I got the kit, you know, I had looked at the, you know, the accessories that came with it, because I got one of the deluxe kits that came with all the accessories, and I didn't think much about the other probe adapters. But when I got these things, I was thinking these were like different ground clips. And I looked at the end, and that's when I realized, no, they go on the end of the scope probe. Now, granted, you have to realize this is a long lead. For the type of work I'm doing here, it's perfectly fine. The signals I'm measuring are gigantic in comparison to any, you know, noise or whatnot I might be picking up through this wire, because it's not shielded cable. But that's perfectly fine. The signals that I'm measuring are usually in the several volt range. And I think the radio just went quiet. It actually just shut off. Holy shit. With the cover off. Quick. Need to check this real quick. Nope, all my signals are still fine. Okay, yeah, I've pretty much determined the problem's got to be on the bottom side. But in any case, well, like I said, I really like their tips. Or that was just, oh my god. I mean, I can't say enough about that. Now it does come. Yeah, I have to say, they really need to do something about the... Now, I never use them. I'm not going to lie to you, so it's not like it really matters. But the little screwdrivers they give you for, you know, probe compensation, so, you know, these have nice, big, heavy metal ends on them. They're not, like I say, they're not cheap probes. If the camera, get my hand out of the way, if the camera focuses again, you can see there's a hole right there in that one probe body. And that's what these little screwdrivers are for. They're non-conductive, non-inductive. You know, it doesn't change because you're adjusting a variable capacitor in the end of those probes. These things are cheap, guys. Probe Master, you need to come out with something a little bit better. You stick this in there and try and turn that, you're going to twist the end right off of a screwdriver. It's useless. I use ceramic screwdrivers, so, you know, I'm using these when I adjust them. So that's no problem for me. That's a little thing. Let's see. Well, I'm just trying to think here, because I got a bunch of other stuff down here, other probe accessories and whatnot. So I've got something I'll never use. Here's a little hook. Yeah, that'll never get used. Like I said, I just... where is the BNC jack? There it is. I'll get it out of this little container I got it in. Because that's one thing I've noticed in a lot of oscilloscope accessory kits. A lot of times you get the BNC adapters, and they're kind of crappy. This one's actually pretty nice. It's a metal, and actually I have another one, where did I put that? Actually I know where that's at. I put that up with the other accessories, sitting right up there, by the oscilloscope. Yeah, here's a really nice, actually that's not a Probe Master one I just showed you there. I think that was a Textronics. This is the one that came with the Probe Master. Really nice, gold-plated, with a real get it back up in camera view here. With a real, if it focuses on it, it's got a real BNC jack. A lot of them, that's why actually when I picked this first one up, I was like, that ain't it. This is the kind that comes with most scope probes. You push that on, this attaches to and then it just uses the probe tip as the pin, the center pin for the BNC jack. I don't like those. And the radio just kicked back on. This one, same thing. You push it on the end of the scope probe, but it actually is a real BNC jack on the end. So I like that. That's a nice little addition. And what those allow you to do is hook up a BNC cable directly to the end of your scope probe. You know, like I say, I like their wires. The hooks the little push-on, and actually they have two different size tips. That's another thing I should show you. Something you don't see. So let me disconnect this scope probe here again. So now, if you're using any accessory on the end of this scope probe, you have to use this black tip. The black tip has the smaller diameter tip, but this tip comes off. And let's say you're doing a little bit bigger kind of clunky work. They have one, let me just put them in here, set them on my hand here side by side. You can see the white one is as it falls on the floor. Let's try that again without having them roll onto the floor. The white one is a lot bigger in diameter. So, you know, let's just say you're doing some big clunky work and you'd rather have a large pointy tip on the end of your scope probe. Well, not a problem. You just screw it on there, and there you go. Now you have a large tip. But like I say, and they say that on all of their packaging, that, you know, whenever using the accessories, you have to have the black tip installed. So if I grab the little card here, you can see it says it right there. Accessories installed with a large white tip will not make electrical contact because it's too large to get into the little contact inside of the end of the accessories. But yeah, I'm really happy with it. Like I say, the only drawbacks I've seen so far, their wire markers. Yeah, they leave a bit to be desired. I mean, if that's my only gripe, honestly, I don't have a gripe. I mean, I can't really complain about something as stupid as that. You know, so there you go. I just wanted to do a really quick video on that. You know, I don't think there have been a lot of people that have done videos on their probes and accessories and whatnot. I'm trying to get everything put back into the little boxes I had them in here. Okay, that one goes up with the oscilloscope. This one gets set over there. So, yeah, I'm going to have to say they're a good probe. Now, they're not cheap. These are not cheap, of course, made in the USA. So you're going to pay a premium for that made in the USA. And I don't mind that. Perfectly fine with that. I wouldn't have spent the money on them if I had a problem with paying the extra money. So I now have 4 of them. Like I say, I got one... what was it? No, I got one 10K. Well, I think I said 1K originally. One 10K, 2 selectable 1 or 10K probes, and one 100K. I think I'm going to get probably 2 more of the selectable 110K. And I actually have one that I'm leaving permanently attached up here, actually, to that signal generator, which is also a frequency counter. So I have... That's this probe right here, runs around to the back side. The counter input on that is actually on the back. Another nice thing with this company, this cable is a lot longer. So you can get the scope probes in different lengths. So actually, if we look back at their little card insert that comes in the packaging, you can see, if it focuses, you can get them in 3.5, 5, 6.6, or 10-foot lengths, which is nice. So, you know, for some equipment like that, where I've got the scope probe attached to the back of the instrument, I needed that extra couple feet to be able to get the probe all the way out here, you know, maybe down off the bench if I've got a big, you know, let's say floor model radio or something sitting out here in front of the bench. So, yeah, I like it. I'm really liking these. The other, probably, it's a little gripe, is the on the ones that have selectable, you know, like 110 times, it's kind of small. But that's because I've become used to these B&K probes where it's a rather big one, sticks out the side. You know, this one's a little bit smaller, but it's easily changeable. You know, I can slide it with my finger. I don't even need to use my fingernail. I can just slide my finger over it, and it changes just fine. But you know, they can only make that so big with the probe body being the size that it is. But yeah, like I said, I think overall I'm really liking these. Oh, and the grabber hook that actually goes onto the scope, that seems to be a pretty nice. Don't go in there. I'm liking that. Again, it has the wire hook. You can see there. So much like the B&K probe right there, it has that nice wire hook, which is one thing I can't, like I said, I just cannot stand those ones made out of flat stamped metal. So there's my my review after using these for, I'm trying to think how long have I been using these things. Probably, I got the first one probably like 2 months ago. And the 4 that I have now, I've had for at least a month. Because I got the first one, loved it, and I ordered 3 more of them. So I'm going to say thumbs up. A few little drawbacks, but it's just the small probe body. I can live with that. But the accessories, man, oh, that's just a godsend for the type of work I do. You have no idea how many years. I've got little bins over there in the bottom of those things. Actually, I can throw them out now. I've had pieces of wire that I made up that had a little loop on the end that I used to grab with hooks like this. And the idea was, that's what I basically was making, was a little probe tip that I used to clip onto the end of these things to try and get down into circuits. And yeah, it was a pain in the you know what. So, Probe Master, thumbs up, man. Oh, you hit it out of the park with your accessories. I mean, I just, man, you've made my life so much easier. So if you work on stuff, especially if you work on stuff where you need to be attaching to, you want to hook up scope probes to ICs, they have the adapters to do that. And you can custom order stuff. They're kind of like, you know, if you ever order Sig Sauer pistols, they've got a custom shop. You know, I've ordered a couple custom Sig Sauer pistols over the years out of a custom shop. You can order their accessories the same way. You tell them what end you want on it, how long you want wires. They custom make probes. That's their specialty. I think actually the next thing I'm going to do is buy some of their multimeter probes. I'd be interested to see if, you know, if they're as nice as these. So there you go. There's just my review of some of the Probe Master oscilloscope probes.